Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about fixing things, a broken office culture and a broken project. So let's get into it. So this is a really good question, and the question in question is basically, is it possible, Frederick, to fix a broken office culture and a project that is really shitty? Because this is basically a response to one of my other videos where I was talking about one of the main reasons as to why somebody quits their job. And the main reason, spoiler alert, is that you create an office culture where it's a systematic degradation of the system and the work process for all the developers. Developers have a need to feel like they're involved, like quite a lot of people, and that they have influence over the decisions that are being made. And if you systematically shut that down, they will start to emotionally leave the project, and then the code just kind of rots from there. So when that has happened, because I have been in companies where this has happened, the question is, can it be fixed? And this is one of those. It's like a man, like a man being able to sustain a platonic relationship with a really attractive female coworker. It's like all theoretical. It's so rare that it's possible that it's not even funny, because this is exactly what it is. This is something that I've only ever heard being thought of as possible. I've never seen it. And the reason why I haven't seen it is not because I don't believe that it can't be done, because I mean any change can be done with enough incentive. Shit, we can solve world peace tomorrow with enough incentive, but it's just that it's so unlikely that this will work that I will call it almost impossible. And the reason why it's almost impossible is because the incentive in a company where this has happened is usually fairly low. What I mean by that is basically that if you have a really small, let's say that for the sake of argument, like this is kind of how I think about it at least. The reason why I will argue that this is unlikely is because it will really only happen, as company will only have this sort of structure at a larger company size. Because any company that is dumb enough, and it's a startup or something like that, to create a situation where this is the case at a really small scale, really faces only one thing, and that is that they will never become big enough for this to be costly to fix. That's because I've never heard of a startup where they create a really, really shitty office culture in terms of like all the engineers kind of just hate hanging out there. Because if they hate hanging out there and you're a startup, which means like you are likely paying them less than what they're worth or what they can get somewhere else. I mean, what's the incentive? Then they both if you have a shitty office culture and a shitty pay, why the fuck are you hanging out there? Unless, they have a gun on you, or maybe they're holding some of your loved ones hostages somewhere. So that's why I argue that this should only be a real issue at larger scales, and that's why it never gets fixed when it's at large scales. Because at small scales you can make a drastic change, because you don't have that many people to move around in comparison to at large scale companies. Because at a small scale you can basically just realize as one of the founders that, oh shit, all of my employees are leaving and we have really shitty surveys or whatever we're doing to figure out how happy people are. We need to make a change here. And then you can literally make that change because you're only handling a handful of people. Said and done, right? These are the agile principles and all the good stuff that people are excited about in management, because they get excited about stuff as well, not just Docker and Kubernetes. They actually want to get excited about human processes, right? But at a large scale, what's going to happen is that you're going to do the survey and you're going to say, oh shit, people really hate working here. And then you're going to do an evaluation. No, you're not going to do an evaluation. You're going to book a meeting with your second in command as the head of this department, of course. And then you're going to pull in all of the section heads, but you need to schedule those. So you can't really do that this week, because that's the week when that big client's going to come in. And they are all busy as well. So they are going to have to synchronize on your schedule, because you're, of course, the head of the department. So therefore, everybody adjusts to you. But that's only going to be possible in the next 5 months, maybe. And then you can have a meeting to set the agenda for another meeting where you will make a survey, which you need to basically outsource to one of the design companies that you hire in order to design that in such a nice way that people actually want to take it. And then it needs to go to HR after that's been done and signed off on, and then they can probably send it out. And by the time you actually get some information back, what you're going to learn is basically the exact thing that you were expecting, that people hate working there. So now your option is, okay, I need to fix this. That's like what you need. That's the first thing you guys out there are probably thinking. We're going to have to fix this somehow. The reality is a little bit different though, because fixing this problem is literally like trying to unnest a really complicated knot of strings that are all interconnected. You see, by fixing this fundamental problem of having a work process that is not empowering and having developers who don't feel like they're involved in the decision-making process, that is the outcome of having an organization where you have multiple sections or multiple departments that all have different levels of influence within that company, because the decisions are not, it's not cross-functional teams and all this agile bullshit that we're kind of doing these days is not the way that a larger organization would have structured their company, like from maybe 10, 20 years ago, even further back if you were looking even further. So they have a company structure that breeds, that basically causes this situation, and that makes that hopefully gets you to the same conclusion that most people, like you should now start to see the problem. In order for you to fix this, you literally have to restructure a large section, if not the entire company. How likely do you think that a company such as those that are world's largest, they're employing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people all across the world. And they're not Google, they're not Facebook, they're not engineering focused, they are money focused, they are sales focused. So what are you going to do? Are you going to fix it? No, what's likely going to happen is that you're going to go to the other way of solving this problem, and that is to pay people more money. That's going to be your solution. And there's also, let's be honest here, there's one more solution that quite a lot of companies try, and that is to try to pretend like they are this empowering workplace where everybody wants to work. So what they do is that they hire some poor sucker who's in charge of that, and that person has absolutely fuck all in terms of, they're basically a glorified PO without any power, and maybe a little bit of HR in there. They're basically hiring a social person that is in charge of activities and getting things happening, and this person, depending on how empowering their position is, which is going to be fairly low just in general, because that's this is also a good learning you can take away from you. If you want to know how open your company is to change and prioritizing your happiness, look at how they treat non-critical staff, because I can tell you that the hierarchy usually goes sales, engineering, design, everything else generally. And the reason is very simple, because this is the ladder of how the company makes their money, which means that the further down the ladder you are, the less you matter. And someone who is there to just make people happy matters very, very little. You really need to have the ears of someone really high up for that to change. So basically you have this poor person who is going to try to simulate that it's possible to do some fun stuff, and maybe they'll add a slip and slide or something to some event somewhere, or they'll book an after work with some people at some point, or maybe they'll add a few bean bags to your office or something like that. But in essence, the fundamental problem isn't solved. The fundamental problem is that you're doing this because you can't fix the problem that is frustrating all your developers. So what I want you to take away from this is that fixing a broken office culture that is like this is really only possible in two ways, and that is the one way is to basically overhaul exactly how you do work within that company. At small scale, that is very feasible, and in a startup that is literally as not that much work in comparison to how it is at the large company. And that's why the large company usually pay you even better, because the shitty companies will actually have to do this because they have no other choice, because the cost of making engineering appearing happy is too great for them to pay. They make a cost value analysis. So it's actually better, I mean, paying them more and doing some tweaks here and there, that's about as much change that you can really hope for in a really, really large company. Because unless they really make a commitment to change their entire infrastructure, you're not going to see that change. I'm sorry to say, and hopefully that makes sense. The more strings you have, the more departments and people who are involved, the harder it is to just change one part, because then everything flows out from that, and you have to change all the other departments and their work processes in order for this to work. It can be done in theory, and I have seen it working to some extent, but I've never seen it happen to the sort of drastic changes that quite a lot of you millennials, well, technically I'm one as well, expect from the world. These sorts of things don't just flip on a dime. It takes a long time, and usually there's a lot of compromising going on in between. Have a great day.